Hello everyone. This is a quick recap of what I did and what I explained in my previous video, which you should be seeing clips from now. Um, so I explained that I had cut this piece from a block of expanding foam because I thought they looked like a natural rock formation, and I could tell that it would be a great piece of scenery for playing in games because it's going to be a natural line of sight blocker. However, in this exaggerated world of Warhammer 40,000, I wasn't going to rest there. Um, in order to add to the piece, I attempted to cut nicks to appear like weathering, extra channels as well into the rock to separate the natural pillars at various strategic points, whilst trying to retain as natural a look as possible. I also explained that the next steps would be to add the polyfiller to seal the foam and to add to the rocky texture. So this video is going to be documenting the continuation of that work. Thank you for watching. So, here we go. I think this is the interesting side. I've managed to get that side looking like a rock formation, I think. Not too bad. It's still drying. Dries quite quick, obviously being polyfiller. Oops. Obviously haven't had to do too much filling on this side. But I will need a base for this one for sure. Right, so here's the follow-up. So I decided I wanted to base this, as I said before, so I've just sanded the bottom so it's flat. I've taken another little blob, just because I thought it'd be quite nice to have some little companion piece of it. And I've just literally just chucked it onto a bit of hardboard, and now I'm going to let it dry, and then painting. This is interesting. This is blobbed out. I'm just going to smooth that in, and I guess that's a permanent feature now, which looks alright. So this piece, I sort of envisaged being sort of like a Marsy colony, kind of, almost like a termite mound or something like that. But maybe, you know, inspired by the Australian outback with the nice, huge, great red mounds. So, well, frankly, I don't actually have any paint that fits that bill. So I've got a whole bunch of these old acrylics that I've picked up over the years. So I'm going to try and do something with them. Black, it's a bit plum, that could work, or berry wine. So yeah, I want to start off with quite a deep sort of browny earthy colour, then build up to sort of a pale chalky colour. We'll see how that goes. I've got my palette here. It needs a little bit of a clean, but should get the basic idea. And I can maybe mix some of this bright red rouge to with whatever is on top to make a nice dry brush or something where we've got little peaks. Maybe the top. I mean, what I could do, but you can see where if the sun's above, where the reflections be, so or the shade will be. So you maybe use that as a guide. So some of these ridges, like there, it's bright. These are bright, and so on. So yeah, just follow that as a painting guide. Pretty handy. So here we are. As you can see, I've had a paint. Ended up using a mixture, because I didn't have the colour I wanted, of this burnt umber and this black plum. So as you can see, it's quite a deep, quite plum red, funny enough. I mean, you can actually sort of see the difference between the base colour and the mix there. I'm still debating. I've actually just noticed I've missed a bit, but I'm still debating flocking around the edges. Not sure it's necessary, but realistically, if it's going to be a weather-beaten mountain or whatever, even if it's been on Mars, it's probably going to be at least some rubble on the ground, and we've got a broken rock off after all. This side is looking maybe a bit uniform for my liking, but I might be able to solve that by adding bits and pieces on, maybe doing stuff afterwards, maybe just from texturing from painting, because you can add quite a lot of 3D effect painting.
Obviously once it dries I'll check it out and see what I've missed, and then think about that. Because I can see all these blooming white specks and I just wanted to point them out. It's kind of a risk of the technique, I guess. So my next step is actually going to be to fill these in. I'm probably going to get some black paint and water it down and fill those gaps in. I feel like that will probably give the effect that I want. Right, so I've accidentally gone a little bit further ahead than I intended to off camera. So essentially what I've done is I've taken some black paint, just straight acrylic, mixed it till it's quite watery, probably a little thicker than it was here, that's because I add even more water, and I went through all of these and I darkened them right up to fill in the gaps as I said I would, and I've got to let them dry, and I purposely wanted them quite dark on this side of it, and I am going to be again dry brushing all of these up with different shades to try and so they won't actually appear quite so like harshly black. And I took the watery approach and did every bit of shade that I could think of on here that I wanted to. Again, I'll be building up the shades on this as well. I'm sure I missed bits. I haven't touched that rock yet. You know, if needs be, I'll even cut that entire rock off. I'm going to go on to dry brushing this next. I've mixed up a very similar colour to that. I've raised the shape, the colour of it with a bit of white as well, and then I've also put in some red to try and make it a bit redder. It's actually turned slightly plum coloured, so we shall see how it goes. I've just tested it a few times to check the shades. So here we go. I'll start dry brushing it. And see how it goes. Right, so I want to give a quick update. It's been a really tough job actually getting the colours right on this. I was afraid to go too white, but I've actually had to go quite light, quite a lot. I think it works quite well. So I've tried to go lighter on this really smooth lumps, and slightly less light on the very rocky bits. I've tried to highlight in the gaps where I can. Again, quite tough to do that nicely. I think you can see the dry brushing effect has worked quite well. I really quite like some of this, but I've only tackled the front of it because it's taken a lot longer than I thought it would take. I've been working on this pretty solidly for the last 25 minutes. And I need to mix a new batch of paint up, and I haven't even touched this side, which is going to be even harder. So, well, I think it's going to be harder. So we'll see what happens. I might start brown with this and build up again. We shall see. Right, so I've done my dry brushing. Looks pretty good. Carry on around there, you know, just carried on. Did a bit more highlighting in places. And did that little mound. Not convinced, I might have a revisit that tomorrow. But you might see it's all really wet at the moment. That's because I've just put a bunch of PVA, clear PVA glue on there. Now I'm going to flock this entirely with the idea that I'm going to paint it over with a brown colour, and tomorrow I can then paint it, and I think I'm going to leave it at that point, minus that little hill which I'll revisit obviously. Right, here we go. I've gone ahead and flocked the base. I've put some artistic license on and put a little bit of glue in certain places. I can get some green flock onto here. That's going to stay green. Just thought it looked quite nice really. It was an accident when I was sprinkling some flock over top. That stuck. It will need some attention later on. So all I've done is I've chucked some PVA glue on the base, chucked a whole bunch of flock on top, and then once that was dry, I then chucked some watered down PVA on top to try and seal it all in. Still drying, it's going to take some time to dry. And on this thing, I decided to, I wasn't entirely happy with the texture of it, so I've now put some flock onto that as well. And I think I'm just going to leave as is. Maybe there's a little bit of vegetation or something growing on it, so there you go. So my plan is literally, once this is all dried and sealed, is to paint it with another colour. That's all I've got at the moment. I can't tell you what colour because I haven't worked it out. I'll probably have a look at a palette or two, just play with palette colours. See where I go from there. So here we go. This is the finished piece. Having said that, it's not quite finished because it's gone a bit wonky. I haven't worked out how to sort that out yet, but that's once I have, I may put an update on the video. But as you can see, looks pretty good. Got some nice colours on there. Basically, the bit that I have done off camera is this base. So once all that PVA glue with all the flock had dried, create this nice rough texture. And I thought about the Mars landscape. What might the Mars landscape look like? And I thought, well, the Earth's going to be fairly similar in colour to the rock. Not quite the same, quite earthy, quite red. But I still wanted it to be darker to add some kind of contrast. So I basically painted it almost black colour, and then I took a red paint and mixed it with the black, so it wasn't quite black, and I did a dry brush over the entire thing, obviously once it was dry. And then just to add a little bit more colour, I just took that red and highlighted it around in certain places just to add a bit of colour depth, really. And if you remember on previous video talking about the flock, there's some of the flock. So it may have happened as an accident to start with, but once I realised it actually looked quite good, I was just able to add a bit of glue in, sprinkle a bit of flock on, not too much because you don't want it to be overloaded, and it gives quite a nice vegetation effect. And again, I went a bit more over the top on the smaller bit at the bottom. Arguably it's got a bit too much there, but it actually looks alright. And this side, again, maybe it's just a bit flat there, that transition. But I mean, if I was being hypercritical, I would chop that down and do it again differently. But actually, I'm quite happy with that. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed this mini tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And thanks to my brother, I'm going to now be saying, remember to click subscribe and like after every video if you like them, and you'll be really good support. Thank you very much. Apparently I got that wrong. It's like and subscribe. Okay, cheers. Ta-da.